Imprisoned for life, the controversial case of James Scott and the 1993 flood. In the summer of 1993, an unrelenting deluge of rain tested the resilience of communities along the Mississippi River. Amid the chaos, a small-town man named James Robert Scott found himself at the center of a legal battle that would lead to a life sentence and ignite debates about justice, evidence, and morality. This is the story of James Scott, a local bad boy turned suspect in one of the largest floods in American history, accused of sabotaging a levee to extend a night of partying. A summer of catastrophe. The year 1993 was one of the most devastating flood seasons in the United States. A combination of persistent rainfall, saturated soils, and unprepared infrastructure created a perfect storm that overwhelmed river systems across the Midwest. The Mississippi River, a crucial lifeline for commerce and agriculture, swelled to unprecedented levels, breaching levees and inundating towns. In Quincy, Illinois, a community braced for disaster. Volunteers from all walks of life rallied to strengthen levees with sandbags, a desperate attempt to hold back the surging river. Among them was James Scott, a 23-year-old local with a reputation for trouble. Known for his past crimes, including arson and petty theft, Scott's presence among the volunteers was notable. However, the events that unfolded on July 16, 1993, would soon place him at the center of a tragic mystery, the breach that changed lives. On the evening of July 16, 1993, the Mississippi River overwhelmed the levee protecting a large swath of farmland near Quincy. The breach caused catastrophic flooding, submerging over 14,000 acres of farmland, destroying homes, and cutting off vital infrastructure, including bridges. A gas station caught in the floodwaters erupted into flames, causing explosions, but, miraculously, no fatalities. In the aftermath, as reporters arrived to document the devastation, James Scott gave an impromptu interview. He described how he had helped sandbag the levee earlier in the day and noted a weak spot he had tried to reinforce. According to Scott, he left briefly to get a drink and returned to find the levee had failed. His demeanor and clean appearance during the interview raised suspicions among law enforcement, who were already familiar with his checkered past. The breach that changed lives. The authorities quickly zeroed in on Scott as a suspect. His criminal record included arson, notably the burning of Webster Elementary School, and numerous other offenses. Police questioned Scott, who maintained his innocence, stating he was only there to help. However, his story raised questions. He admitted to moving sandbags from one area to another, claiming he believed it was the right thing to do at the time. This admission, coupled with his suspicious behavior, led investigators to dig deeper. The breakthrough in the case came when a man named Joe Flox, under house arrest for unrelated charges, made a shocking allegation. Flox claimed that Scott had confessed his intention to break the levee, citing a bizarre motive to keep his wife, Susie, from returning home so he could continue partying and drinking. Susie, a waitress working across the river, would have been stranded if the bridges were flooded. The investigation begins. Armed with Flox's testimony, the police arrested James Scott on charges of causing a catastrophe, a serious offense under Missouri law. Prosecutors alleged that Scott intentionally created a hole in the levee, leading to the catastrophic flood. His motive, they argued, was selfish, to extend a night of debauchery and infidelity. The trial began in November 1994 and was largely built on circumstantial evidence. There was no direct proof linking Scott to any deliberate sabotage of the levee. However, several witnesses testified that Scott had made incriminating statements about his intentions. The prosecution's case hinged on these testimonies, painting Scott as a reckless individual whose actions caused immense harm. The defense countered by presenting soil experts who argued that the levee's failure was inevitable due to its poor condition and the extraordinary pressure exerted by the swollen river. They pointed out that similar breaches had occurred upriver, suggesting that natural forces, not human interference, were to blame. Despite these arguments, the jury deliberated for only 4 hours before convicting Scott. The arrest and trial. James Scott was sentenced to life in prison, a punishment that sparked debate. Some viewed this sentence as excessively harsh, considering Scott's lack of violent or sexual offenses. Others saw it as a necessary measure of justice, given the immense damage caused by the flood. For Scott, the conviction felt like a judgment on his past rather than the events of July 16, 1993. A controversial sentence. Over the years, questions have emerged about the fairness of Scott's trial. One significant detail uncovered by investigative journalists involved Norman Hare, the president of the Thaddeus River Drainage District. Hare, whose land suffered extensive damage in the flood, testified against Scott during the trial. It was later revealed that Hare received an insurance payout based on the determination that vandalism, not a natural disaster, caused the levee breach. This raised concerns about potential conflicts of interest, as Hare would not have been eligible for compensation if the flood had been deemed an act of God. Questions of fairness. Throughout his imprisonment, James Scott has maintained his innocence. He insists that he was wrongly accused based on his criminal history and the testimony of individuals with questionable motives. Scott's first opportunity for parole will come in July 2026, and he hopes to present new evidence to challenge his conviction. James Scott's perspective. The case of James Scott raises broader questions about the role of circumstantial evidence in criminal trials, the influence of community bias, and the complexities of attributing blame in natural disasters. It also highlights the precarious balance between protecting public safety and ensuring fair treatment under the law.
I was arrested October 1st, 1993 for an unrelated burglary in Illinois. During interrogation, they had several cases they was looking at, they was trying to close, and one of them was the West Quincy drug break. If I was never on the radar of the Quincy Police Department for things that happened as a kid, none of this probably would have ever occurred.
The larger implications.
We noticed a trouble spot or something that we thought was a problem spot or trouble spot in a section of the levee. I moved sandbags from the brim to the cap to a depressed area, and maybe four, maybe five, but it could have been more. It could have been, I don't think it was more. It was probably less. And the finger started pointing. You know, there's no way he's over doing good. You know, he did that, this, and, you know, it went on and on and on.
What about that day would you change if you could?
I was asked before, actually by guys here, you know, and by family and friends, if you had to do it all over again, would you go back to West Quincy on July 16th? I said, yes, I would. Would the levee failed on July 16th? I don't know, probably would have. But it didn't fail because of me.
As Scott waits for his next day in court, his story serves as a cautionary tale about the lasting consequences of a tarnished reputation and the human desire for justice in the face of tragedy. Whether guilty or innocent, his case continues to intrigue, drawing attention to the fragile interplay between human actions and the forces of nature.